Decolonization. It's a term we hear often, but what does it truly mean? At its heart, decolonization is the process by which a country breaks free from foreign rule. It signifies the end of an era of subjugation and the dawn of self-determination. It's a powerful act of reclaiming what was lost: power, land, and identity. It's about taking back control of one's destiny and shaping a future free from external domination. This involves not only political independence but also the restoration of cultural pride and the rebuilding of social structures. It's not just about changing flags or leaders. Decolonization goes far beyond symbolic gestures. It's a deep transformation in how a society sees itself, its values, and its place in the world. It requires a fundamental shift in mindset, moving away from the imposed narratives of the colonizer and embracing the authentic voice of the colonized. Colonizers systematically imposed their laws, often disregarding or suppressing existing legal traditions. They established schools, often with the aim of assimilating the local population into the colonizer's culture. And they implemented economic systems designed to benefit the colonizing power, exploiting resources and labor. This often involved erasing local cultures, suppressing traditions, and undermining social structures. They rewrote histories to justify their dominance and control. True decolonization means dismantling those systems of oppression and control. It requires reviving suppressed languages, giving them a place of honor and ensuring their survival for future generations. It means celebrating traditions, reclaiming cultural practices, and honoring ancestral heritage. And it involves centering indigenous perspectives, knowledge systems, and ways of knowing. It's about building new institutions that are rooted in local values and needs. Institutions that reflect the people's values and aspirations, ensuring a more just and equitable society. Decolonization is a revolution, a profound and transformative process. It's political, challenging existing power structures and demanding self-governance. It's economic, seeking to create fair and sustainable systems that benefit all members of society. And it's cultural, celebrating identity and heritage. It's aimed at restoring self-worth and sovereignty, empowering communities to shape their own destinies. It's the story of how colonized peoples fought, often against overwhelming odds, to break both physical and psychological chains, liberating themselves from oppression and reclaiming their freedom. This ongoing process continues to shape the world, influencing global politics, economics, and culture, and the lives of billions today, as societies grapple with the legacies of colonialism and strive for a more just and equitable future. The wave of decolonization, a seismic shift in global power dynamics, was about to crash upon the shores of history. For centuries, vast empires had exerted their control over distant lands and peoples, but the seeds of change had been sown, nurtured by the yearning for self-determination and the inherent human desire for freedom. This monumental transformation was set in motion, in no small part, by the unprecedented upheaval and devastation of the world wars. The global conflict served as a catalyst, shaking the foundations of the established world order and exposing the vulnerabilities of even the most formidable empires. European empires, once seemingly unbreakable and stretching across continents, their power unchallenged for generations, were significantly weakened and their aura of invincibility exposed by the immense strain of global conflict. The wars had drained their resources, both human and material, leaving them vulnerable to the rising tide of nationalism. Colonized soldiers, often conscripted to fight for their colonial masters on distant battlefields, fought for freedom abroad, experiencing new cultures and ideologies. Upon returning home, these veterans brought with them new ideas, a broadened perspective, and a burning desire for self-rule, fueling the burgeoning independence movements. They had fought for the freedom of others, now they demanded it for themselves. The rise of the United States, emerging as a global superpower after the war, and the Soviet Union, both ideologically opposed to traditional colonialism, became increasingly critical of the old imperial order, adding their voices to the growing chorus of dissent. This shift in global power dynamics increased international pressure on colonial powers to grant independence to their colonies. The newly formed United Nations amplified calls for self-determination, providing a platform for colonized peoples to voice their grievances and demand their rights on the world stage. This international scrutiny made it increasingly difficult for empires to justify their continued rule, forcing them to confront the moral and political contradictions of their colonial policies. In the aftermath of World War II, the old order crumbled with increasing speed, as exhausted empires, weakened by war and facing growing internal resistance, gradually lost their grip on their overseas possessions. A new global climate emerged, one characterized by rising nationalism, anti-colonial sentiment, and a growing demand for self-governance. This created the perfect environment, setting the stage for nations across the globe to rise up and demand their independence from colonial rule. The world map was about to be dramatically redrawn as new nations emerged from the ashes of old empires, forever altering the geopolitical landscape. This transformation was driven by the unwavering courage and determination of those seeking freedom, the unsung heroes who dared to challenge the established order and fight for a better future. India's independence stands as a monumental landmark, a pivotal moment not just for the nation itself, but in the broader, sweeping history of decolonization across the globe. It marked a turning point, signaling the beginning of the end for colonial empires worldwide. For nearly 2 centuries, Britain held sway over India, its influence permeating every aspect of Indian life. They systematically exploited its vast resources, from precious minerals to agricultural wealth, and fundamentally reshaped its society to serve British interests. Traditional industries were dismantled, and new systems were imposed, often with devastating consequences for the Indian people. But from the depths of this oppression, a powerful and resilient movement for freedom steadily grew, fueled by a burning desire for self-determination. This movement found its iconic leader in figures like Mahatma Gandhi, whose philosophy and methods would inspire generations. Gandhi's revolutionary strategy of nonviolent resistance, including strategic boycotts of British goods, symbolic marches that captured the world's attention, and acts of mass civil disobedience, galvanized millions of ordinary Indians to stand up against British rule. Visionary leaders like Nehru and the steadfast Patel skillfully built a formidable political force through the Indian National Congress, directly challenging British authority and demanding self-governance. The arduous struggle for independence was long and fraught with challenges, marked by mass arrests of activists and leaders, and deep-seated communal divisions within Indian society, divisions that were often deliberately exploited by the British through their divide and rule policies. Finally, in 1947, after decades of relentless struggle, India finally gained its long-awaited independence, but tragically, it came at the devastating cost of partition and the immense human tragedy that followed. The subcontinent was forcibly divided into 2 separate nations, India and Pakistan, triggering widespread violence, mass displacement, and unimaginable suffering as millions were forced to flee their homes. Despite the immense pain and trauma of partition, India's journey to independence ultimately proved that resilience, unwavering determination, and strategic nonviolent resistance could indeed topple even the most powerful empire. This historic achievement served as a beacon of hope and powerfully inspired decolonization movements in Africa, Asia, and across the world, accelerating the dismantling of colonial systems and paving the way for a new era of self-determination for countless nations. Africa's decolonization was a mosaic of struggles, some peaceful, others violent. Ghana, led by Kwame Nkrumah, achieved independence through negotiation and mass action, inspiring the continent. Algeria's path was far bloodier, with a brutal war against France that left deep scars. The Congo's abrupt independence from Belgium led to chaos, as the country was left unprepared for self-rule. These stories showed that the way decolonization happened shaped each nation's future. Some gained freedom through unity and planning, others paid a heavy price for rushed or violent transitions. The legacy of colonialism's end was as complex as its beginning. Independence brought joy but also daunting challenges for new nations. Colonial powers left behind fragile states, divided societies, and economies built for exploitation. Many countries faced power vacuums, with inexperienced leaders or military coups filling the void. Artificial borders drawn by colonizers fueled internal conflicts and civil wars. Economies remained dependent on exporting raw materials, trapping nations in cycles of poverty. The psychological scars of colonialism made building national identity and unity difficult. The struggle shifted from winning freedom to building stable, just societies. The early years of independence were often marked by instability and disappointment. Decolonization sparked a cultural rebirth as nations reclaimed their heritage. Colonizers had tried to erase local languages, arts, and histories. Post-independence writers and artists revived indigenous languages and traditions, rejecting colonial narratives. Music, literature, and art flourished, blending old and new to express unique identities. Movements like negritude celebrated black culture and pride. This cultural revival was essential for healing and building confidence. By reclaiming public spaces and symbols, nations redefined themselves. True independence meant not just self-rule, but self-knowledge and pride in one's heritage. Political independence was only the beginning. Colonial influence lingered in minds and institutions. Education systems often continued to prioritize European knowledge, sidelining local histories and perspectives. Movements like Rhodes Must Fall demanded a rethinking of what and how we learn. Decolonizing knowledge means centering indigenous voices and challenging the dominance of Western narratives. This effort extends to museums, public spaces, and debates about history and identity. Repatriating stolen artifacts and renaming places are part of this ongoing transformation. Decolonization is a continuous process requiring vigilance and commitment. It's about dismantling colonial legacies in every aspect of life. The history of decolonization is crucial for understanding today's world. Its legacy explains political instability, economic inequality, and complex identities across the globe. Learning these stories teaches us about justice, resilience, and the power of ordinary people. It challenges us to confront uncomfortable truths about privilege and exploitation. For former colonies, it's a reminder of cultural strength and the ongoing work for true sovereignty. Understanding decolonization builds empathy and a nuanced view of global issues. The lessons of this era inspire us to keep fighting for justice and equality. The journey of decolonization is not over. It's a shared, ongoing story. Let's look at real examples of decolonization. In Africa, Ghana was the first sub-Saharan country to gain independence in 1957, followed by Nigeria, Kenya, and Algeria. Each of these nations proudly raised their own flags as symbols of freedom. Around the world, India broke free from British rule in 1947, Indonesia from the Dutch in 1949, and Vietnam from the French in 1954. These flags represent the triumph of self-determination and the end of colonial rule.